All right, Sarah, you showed up and we're going to talk about you.
All right. I'm the woman of the hour. So
You
many people have been talking about me.
you are the woman of the hour. You know what's funny? I was in my news feed the other day and something came up about you. I was like, "What? I'm going to be
Yeah,
talking to her about this whole thing." It was
it's
weird.
I just got my blue check mark on Instagram yesterday. That's like celebrity status.
Wow, look at you. You're just going. You're going. All right, so
Yeah.
all right, let's jump into this. We're going to jump right in. Okay, so you were a school teacher and you got fired for having an OnlyFans account. That's the headline. But what's
Yeah.
the story, the origin of this story?
Yeah. There's so much to my life and the journey that I've been on that got me on the OnlyFans platform in the first place. So you just let me know what part of my story you'd like to dive into.
Well, I think it's important for the audience to know, like, the teaching, where you started as a teacher, right? And at a certain point, you felt you wanted to do something else. Teachers don't make a lot of money. I'm pretty sure most people know this, correct? But
Yeah. So that's actually what sort of happened was about 5 years ago, I found myself a single mom on a teaching salary. And I had moved into an apartment and the rent was really, really high. And the teaching job that I had, I taught field trips essentially. I was a contract employee for the state of Indiana for a Department of Defense funded program. Okay. So I wasn't a traditional classroom teacher, I was a field trip teacher. And that job also did not provide health insurance. So between my rent, which was $1,100, and my health insurance, which was $250, that was about the equivalent of one paycheck.
right,
So what happened was I started getting into this poverty cycle. And I started hanging out with lots of women friends who are entrepreneurial. And I started trying a lot of different side hustles to supplement my income. So I did everything from teeth whitening to reading tutoring. I got certified in group exercise, and friends would pay me to work out with them. I've lost a lot of weight myself and started doing keto coaching on the side. I donated plasma. I did graphic design for people wanting logos. If there was an opportunity for me to make money, I was hustling and I was working a lot. I purchased sublimation equipment and taught myself how to make shirts and tumblers and mugs, and would do vendor events selling different items. But even though I was working really, really hard, I was still just caught up in the poverty cycle. And as you know, in the springtime, inflation really started to get high and the gas prices went up and everything started going up. Groceries. And that was when a local friend of mine who was about my age, 40 years old, and a mother, she had started OnlyFans page and she had posted on Facebook that she had made $10,000 that month. So, for me being in this desperate financial situation, being a teacher, I thought that would be a viable opportunity for me to maybe make some money, pay off some credit card debt, um, and get myself ahead in financially.
right. And so all this time, you got into this, and I believe from the story at the school, I don't want to hack this up. Someone encouraged you to do this,
Yes.
right?
So the reason that I started posting my page in a more public way, and to kind of put this in perspective, I had only had my page a few weeks before I got fired. This
Yeah,
wasn't like I had um been on the platform or had a big following or was making any money on it. But right before my summer break, which was when I kind of planned on pursuing OnlyFans, like I was going to have a month off. So I thought, perfect, I'll have a month off. I'll see if I can make any money on OnlyFans and just test the waters. Well, we had a casual conversation in the office right before summer break with myself, another coworker, teacher, and my boss. And she had said that her husband had gone to a bachelor party in South Carolina or North Carolina, and the stripper had charged the party $600 just to show up. And so we had this conversation about sex work, and we were all very impressed at what the stripper was able to ask for. That didn't include tips or anything. My coworker said, yeah, I was thinking of starting an OnlyFans page. And then she joked that maybe she would have her husband start it instead because gay men love him. And my boss said, yes, you two should start OnlyFans pages and you can sell your panties on there. Men love panties. You will make tons of money selling panties. Well, in my mind, my boss had just encouraged me to start an OnlyFans page. He didn't seem to have any issues with sex work. And I didn't feel like my job was at risk because of that conversation, frankly.
So it's weird that he would encourage you to do it, but then over time, then be like, no, no, this isn't. We're not going to do this. Like something must have happened in between that time.
His boss was the boss that fired me.
Right.
And, conveniently during my firing, he never brought this conversation up. But, I would not have risked the primary income of my teaching job, being a single mom. I never would have risked that had he not encouraged me to do so.
Did you ever talk to this person again after this about what happened?
No, I haven't, because I think they've been so afraid that I was going to sue.
Yeah.
And, um, you know, frankly, another part of my story that's very interesting is that I was a civilian teacher at a military facility. And for years, I was actually sexually harassed, and stalked by a soldier. This was all documented. So I find it a little interesting that my employer was comfortable with me being the target of sexual harassment within the military facility as a civilian teacher, but me taking on the sexual exploitation myself and empowering myself through OnlyFans was a no-go. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, I haven't heard from them because I think they're still afraid I'm gonna sue.
What did they say was wrong with you being on OnlyFans? Like what? It's not. You're not. I don't know this, but you're. Are you doing like sexual acts on there? Are you just selling? Like what's the
Yeah,
problem with them?
that I think a couple interesting parts of my story as well, that I'm single. And so I've actually been a single woman on dating sites. And if you compare what I do on OnlyFans and what I did as a single woman and many, many single people do on dating sites, it is exactly the same.
Really?
Yeah, on dating sites, it's very much a hookup culture. People are sexting, men are sending dick pics. You're exchanging nude photos, you're FaceTiming and having sexy FaceTimes. So when you look at the realm of being a single person navigating a virtual dating world, nothing I do and still do on my page is any different different than I've participated in as a single person on a dating site. The only difference is that I monetize uh, those pictures and videos and stuff like that. So it wasn't my employer that I don't think had a problem, because my boss actually cried the day I got fired. We were very close. We had a very respectful relationship. We really worked well together. We had a very small team. There were only 4 of us. So you really got to know each other on a more personal level. And my boss saw me working, my 5, 6 side hustles as well. He knew my financial struggles too. So it was actually this extreme right wing blogger in the area who outed me and stole my photos from OnlyFans, distributed my nude photos on Facebook, on Twitter. So I was a victim of revenge porn. And he was the one that not only notified my job, but then wrote this like very perverted, salacious article about me, which is sort of what got the ball rolling as far
Yeah,
as me in the media.
that's crazy. I mean,
Cra-
why would this
Crazy.
seriously? That's nuts. Why would someone take this much time? First of all, how they get your photos? Were they in there looking? Like,
Well, so this was interesting because when he originally messaged me to like blackmail me, he was like, "You have an OnlyFans page, and I'm gonna tell everyone you're a teacher." Well, when I started my page, it was a free page, and my page was clean. So that means if you subscribe to my page, there was zero nudity on my wall. The only way for someone to access any nude photos of me would be to direct message me, and I would respond and put the photos behind a paywall. So they had to consent to receiving the photos, um, and pay for them actually. So it's interesting because this man, not only is he like this extremist right wing blogger, but his ex-wife was a teacher. And so he has this very strange vendetta against teachers in the community. So I find out later that a friend of mine, her boyfriend was a local middle school teacher, and he had put Black Lives Matters in his Facebook profile. Well, he took that profile information, wrote an article about how he's a communist, and actually even posted his address.
wow.
Yeah. And then after my situation, he found a gay high school teacher, band teacher in the area, and tried getting him fired as well. So what this person is doing and using his platform as a blogger to attack private citizens and teachers in the community is outrageous. Um, Especially with the teacher shortage and everyone knowing the conditions that teachers are challenged with, and the lack of pay and the lack of respect from kids and parents. I feel like that's the very last profession that anyone should be messing with.
They're basically just trying to cancel people. Like it's
Yes, the
what
cancel culture.
but was this like, I mean, this is honestly, this is crazy that someone like would spend this much time. Why don't you spend time doing other things that are productive?
Per- yeah,
Like,
so one of the things he wrote about me, called me, was a groomer, which is absolutely not true. I've been a teacher for 20 years. I've never in my life been accused of something like that. And
right.
it really is upsetting because I feel like that's a very serious allegation to accuse somebody of.
Yeah.
But this particular person was fired as a journalist from all the local media companies in the area. So he started his own blog, and he believes that he is some hero, you know, exposing liberals, I guess, whatever, in the area. It's strange. It was shocking to me. It was really shocking.
So what was the kind of the emotional fallout for you after this happened? How did you deal with this?
It was very, very hard on my mental health because, if we kind of zoom out and look at my year, I was really struggling financially. So I was already under a lot of pressure that was affecting my mental health. I was already experiencing depression. I was experiencing some suicidal ideation before this even happened. So then it got crazy because not only was this man writing these slanderous, perverted things about me, ruining my reputation in the community, he stole the primary income of a single mom and everything I'd worked for as a teacher. But I also got thrust into becoming a public figure. And once he wrote the article about me, other media outlets started writing articles as well, not from interviewing me or writing about me in a fair and balanced way, but using the slanderous things that this blogger had written about me and filling in the gaps and fabricating stories about me. So that was really, really hard. It was, humiliating and being a victim of revenge porn.
Yeah.
Knowing that this man stole photos from my OnlyFans page that were on a platform behind a paywall. It wasn't like I was distributing nude photos on any public platform. These were consensual, these were paid for, it was transactional. So I never in a million years thought that somebody would steal my nude photos and try to use them as clickbait in an effort to humiliate and shame me.
How did you what were your thoughts about just people in general as this was going on? Did you kind of start feeling like, man, I can't believe there's people out there that act like this and are trying to get people?
Um, it it has opened my eyes. I guess truthfully, even though I get labeled as a liberal, I have kind of been non-political. I don't really like the I don't really like politics in general, but what I have come to realize is that there is this really strange attack by extreme right wing conservatives against teachers, public school teachers. And they're accusing teachers of being groomers and pedophiles. And I didn't realize that what happened was I became a figure for this attack
Mm,
um, against public school teachers.
yeah.
So that now that I've had some time to like zoom out, see what's happening, um, it is really a crazy thing for me because, I look at a public school teacher, which I wasn't. I did get my degree in teaching, but I didn't work in the traditional schools. And I left that type of teaching very early on in my career. But being a teacher and working with teachers, I do have a heart for public school teachers, because a public school teacher and a public school welcomes every student, whether they come from a low socioeconomic background, regardless of their mental health issues, regardless of their race, regardless of their sexuality, regardless of their gender identity. Public schools welcome every child, and every child in this country deserves an education and a safe place to be themselves.
Yeah.
And so it's really disheartening to me to have people attacking public school teachers. Public school teachers are the most abused profession in this whole country. And to see people outright labeling them horrific things, when the public school teachers that I know have some of the biggest hearts that you'll ever find in a human being.
Yeah.
They really love kids, and they're there for kids. And despite all of the obstacles that we create for teachers, they show up day in and day out with their smiles and their positive energy, because of the kids. So that part was eye opening for me, because I've stayed out of politics really, and I didn't know or understand this attack against teachers. And then all of a sudden I'm thrust into the spotlight and getting attacked by people.
This seems like also a larger discussion on what people do in their private life and how people delineate between how that private life affects the person's forward facing public, let's say their job. And for that, what have you seen with that? Is there just more backlash about people's private life and how it affects their public, or should it matter that much? What are your thoughts related to that?
I think that every person deserves privacy after work. And I think what's interesting to me, and where we really need to create some laws around this, really, is how much people use technology in their private lives. And as long as nobody's doing anything illegal, which I wasn't, being
Right.
on OnlyFans, um, it's really not your employer's business. And it's even more interesting with my story, because as a single woman, I just really did not like dating sites. I don't like the hookup culture that's been created. I feel like it creates a culture where women are being treated like consumables. And so I've spent a large majority of my last 5 years being single, celibate, and I'm still celibate even though I have my OnlyFans page. So I guess what's even more interesting is that when you look at a single person's behavior on a dating site, for example, we have this hookup culture. If I had been participating in the hookup culture and I was sleeping with, many men, bringing them around my kids, subjecting myself to unplanned pregnancies or STIs, that behavior is deemed acceptable, and I would still have my teaching job.
Crazy.
But crazy. But because, in my opinion, I am managing my sexual energy in a more responsible and healthy way by participating in virtual sex, everyone lost their mind and felt like I was incapable of um, teaching children. It makes no sense. Every person has a private sex life. that doesn't mean you bring your private sex life into the boardroom or the classroom. And I never did, because I had my OnlyFans page a few weeks. I had to go back to work to teach 3 weeks of summer camps. And I have the text message from my boss praising summer camps and what an awesome job I did. So it's a little confusing to me what people think is acceptable behavior and what people think is not acceptable
Yes.
behavior.
Well, it's not discussed. Like, there's no nuance to it. I feel like what you said was a lot of nuance. Dating site culture, OnlyFans culture, all this. And I'm sure you can go to any school, and there are plenty of teachers doing plenty of different things outside in their life that many would deem not appropriate. But there's one thing gets elevated as much worse than the other for some odd reason. And that's extremism is just infiltrating a lot of general public life, which I think is very dangerous.
It is very dangerous, and I feel like our laws are lagging behind to protect people, especially when it comes to virtual platforms. And in particular, let's be honest, the reason I was targeted is because I'm a woman. As a woman, I have been subjected to um so many parts of our culture that people think is okay. I was raped when I was 19, so I've experienced rape culture. When I was working at the military facility, like I mentioned, I endured sexual harassment. I had a soldier who stalked me, harassed me, and I had to get a protective order against. And I was a victim of revenge porn, which is, a new way of using technology as a weapon to humiliate and shame women for their bodies and their sexuality. So I feel like as a woman, we need more laws that are going to be protecting women in ways that men don't necessarily have to worry about.
Mm. Yeah.
Even the OnlyFans platform now, on my page, I don't do any of the hardcore stuff. I'm celibate, so I don't have any partnered videos, but a lot of the content makers do. And that means that there's a lot of men that are on OnlyFans participating in content videos. But I
Right.
don't hear about men who are filming and creating content with a female content maker losing their jobs or being called names or um, having anything said in a derogatory way about the men that are on the platform. So I think what it's really showing me is a lot of the uh, just disparities between the way women are treated and men are treated when it comes to our bodies and when it comes to our sexuality and our sexual energy as well.
Yeah, it's I always say, like, if you depend on kind of larger institutions to take care of you, I mean, we should hope that, but you have to get your story out there. The change comes with you opening the can
Yes,
against
and
other people.
that's where I'm realizing, because in the very beginning where I was very distraught, I
Hmm.
was very humiliated, I was very scared. Um and I felt like I was in the midst of a lot of loss. I realized I had to grieve losing my teaching career. That was very hard. That was my identity. I was a teacher, so I feel like I had a lot taken from me. But as I've been working more on my mental health and regaining my footing and looking for ways to alchemize this opportunity, I've realized that the most powerful the most powerful attribute that I have left is my story and my voice. And that when I take an opportunity to speak out and share my story, not only does it create an opportunity for me to heal, but my story is so many other women's stories. So when I use my voice and speak up, I'm speaking up for a lot of my sisters out there as well.
I think you're so right. And I think some of the worst things you can do is like not tell your story. I always think that because I think
Yeah,
you feel like, well, this is like, what are people going to think of it? People are going to think whatever they want, regardless. And the
yes.
fact, the mystery behind it makes it worse in many ways. I feel because then they're going to, like, if somebody reads ahead, let's say I read that headline that I saw in my news feed about you, I might
Yeah.
think a certain thing about that. And I was like,
You,
no, I'm going to be talking to Sarah and I'm going to find out all the information. The problem
yeah.
is we're not interested in always finding out the information fully. But that's
Yeah.
why I do this, because I want people to start listen. I bet no one is going to listen to this and think Sarah's celibate. Guarantee you no one thought that. Guarantee it. Because they think
I know.
OnlyFans, they think something is happening.
Yes. And, I think that's why it's so important when, as I found myself a headline, that I reclaimed my power and I said, no, this is my story. You're going to hear it from my words. And a headline uses, and especially the way people have portrayed me in the media, the way they have written about me in very perverted ways that are not true. Um, a headline dehumanizes a person. And the truth is that when we stop and we listen to somebody's story, it creates a greater sense of empathy. And we all have a story that would break your heart if
Yeah.
we told it. We all do. We're all human. We're all struggling with something. And that's why I agree with you that sometimes people look at the dark parts of their stories, the parts that have the shame and the humiliation, and they don't want to speak about that. But I want to show up in a very brave way, because when you talk about those dark parts of your story, that's what connects you to other people. That's the
Yes.
human part that connects us all, because then you don't feel so alone. You don't feel isolated in your struggles and your shame and the different unfair circumstances that we've all been subjected to. We all have a rocky road with disappointments and heartbreaks that have gotten us to where we are. So the same is true for me. I didn't just jump onto the OnlyFans platform. There were a lot of heartbreak, a lot of struggles, a lot of difficulties, that made me feel like I was in a desperate situation, and that OnlyFans platform was a viable way for me to reclaim my life and get myself out of some of these struggles that I'd found myself in.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that amazing? Like when you tell your story, it creates a wave. And then all of a sudden, if somebody listens to it, they go, I totally was not thinking about it that way. That's always my aim is like, listen to the story. It'll probably be very different from what you think. Like in terms of sex, sexuality, I often feature a lot of people who are either sex workers, sex researchers, and all that stuff because I'm like, we have to stop not talking about this. Like
Yeah.
it's
Oh my,
ridiculous. The
it's
lack,
ridiculous.
the
It so much shame around being human.
yeah,
There's
I mean,
unnecessary shame about being a sexual person, and
yeah,
so much shame around our bodies. And you know, now that I've been on the OnlyFans platform, not only have I found the platform to be empowering for me as a woman, where I get to take control of my sexual energy. I say who, when, what, how, where I did not feel empowered as a woman on the dating sites. I get to empower myself in a financial way that I was unable to do so with a college degree as a teacher. But there's so many interesting parts of OnlyFans, even when we talk about the men who are on OnlyFans, that platform really is a safe place for men with some mental health issues to go and express their sexual energy in a safe way that's not harming anybody. It is, the way I feel about it is, in our culture, we really build men up in a way to lead with their sexual energy. So even though the platform is sort of known for being a virtual sex site, when you get into the DMs and you start having conversations with men, you start realizing some of their struggles and why they're on OnlyFans. There's one of my fans, very sweet. Actually, I will say too, my fans are the kindest men I've ever met, ever. They're just so kind. And one of my fans is recently widowed. So he's grieving the loss of his wife. He still has sexual needs, but he doesn't want to go, he doesn't want to be part of the dating culture. He doesn't want to interact with someone in a real life physical way. So he's on there. It's a safe place for him. There's another fan of mine, and he's told me that he self-harms. And so I try to use my page and talk about mental health a lot, because we don't encourage men to talk about their feelings enough. And then you have lots of men who are feeling isolated and shame and alone, and they don't know who to talk to. So now all of a sudden, yeah, I'm on there and sharing nude photos and stuff, but I'm also in the DMs just having regular everyday conversations with people about their lives. And so you look at different people and why a virtual sex platform would be very good for them. People with disabilities, people who are older, right, people who don't have a partner, even people with autism who might have difficulties interacting socially with people, or with people of the opposite sex. Well, now all of a sudden they have a platform to responsibly manage their sexual energy in a way that's not harming them or anybody else. So I agree with you. I feel like we have got to start talking about sex and how to manage it in ways that humanize all of us. Because we all experience it. And in one sense, our culture is completely obsessed with sex. And we look at the porn industry and it's $1 billion industry. But then on the other hand, there's so much shame and sexual repression. And it's so conflicting. And so it makes people feel like something's wrong with them, or they need to hide it, or they feel bad about it, or they're shamed with it, and even you look at the OnlyFans platform and people who maybe want to explore other parts of their sexuality or different kinks, stuff like that. It's a safe place for people to do so. It's private. It allows them to do it without feeling judged or worried. So I feel like if we could have intelligent and heartfelt conversations around sex and sexuality, and how a virtual sex platform fits into all of this, I feel like the virtual sex platform could be a really, really healing space for lots of people around all the sexual trauma that we project upon people.
I mean, it's such a detailed conversation, a nuance, because you're right. There's extremism with this in sex. There's like hardcore porn, which is totally unrealistic. And often there's, as I've talked to many people, there's a lot of that is not what's happening is not realistic on there. And then
Right.
there's the other side, which is complete repression,
Yes.
total submission to nothing, a purity culture, which is very puritanical and again ridiculous, not realistic. We're
No.
not meeting in the middle here, that people like to express themselves sexually in different ways. And as
Yes.
long as it is not harming another person, why do you care if someone is
Correct.
into this position, that position, they're into kink, they like
Yeah.
BDSM, they go to dungeons? Who
Yeah.
cares? Like,
As long as they're of age and it's
right,
consensual,
right.
people people have the right to explore those things. Who is anybody to interject into somebody's sex life and their bedroom? It's
Yeah,
overreach.
yeah,
Even with my job, feeling like, when I got fired, the way my boss's boss shamed me and made me feel like I was doing something wrong. Um, I think that's a big part of the conversation as well, because like
yeah,
you said, you hear my story, I am managing my sexual energy in a responsible way.
yeah.
I don't bring people around my children. Nobody has met my kids in 5 years. I haven't actually dated anybody outside of my marriage. And quite frankly, the dating culture that we have created, if you want to talk about what's harmful to people and what's going to be really um, creating a lot of dysfunctions for people, it's the dating sites
Very
and
interesting.
this hookup culture that's creating, making women feel like consumables. Because, when you look at OnlyFans, it's a transactional site. So there's no sense of manipulation.
Mm,
Everybody knows why we're here. I'm going to provide news and you're going to pay me. On a dating site, men use that platform to manipulate women for free sex. And so there's this whole culture of manipulation so that it's, they lead with, yeah, I want to date you. And they're still married, or they just got in a fight with their girlfriend and hopped on a dating site. They weren't trying to date me, they're trying to hook up with me. And, I experienced that for 5 years. Like, I have stories being on that dating site, like, people would not believe. It's unreal. And that's the part that I feel like needs to be addressed. There's that manipulation aspect to it. And the way dating culture is ruining dating. And I feel like creating even more dysfunction between men and women and what it's like to be in relationship or trying to move towards a relationship. Because I don't feel like for the majority of the men on dating sites that they're there to date, but because the dating sites are
right.
packaged in a palatable way, it's dating, it's harmless. Well, I'm here to tell you that I was on it for 5 years, and being used for sex was horrible. And that's what actually steered me into celibacy, because I was like, I can't do this to myself anymore. I don't
Wow.
like being treated this way. It's demeaning. So I have actually had a much better experience on OnlyFans than I ever did on Tinder or Bumble or any other dating site. And then when you think about those companies profiting off of my pictures and my experience on there, and then you look at lots of people like myself have insecure attachment issues, and that's the person that the dating sites cater to. Like, for a lot of people like myself, you're never going to get off of the dating sites. You're only going to have these recycled experiences that wound you even more. And make that insecure attachment issue that you already have worse and harder to
Yeah.
overcome. So there are just so many layers to this, and the perspective that I have is different because if you're partnered or you've been in a relationship for a long time, you don't know what the dating site culture is like. And I would imagine that there's very few people that are going to tell you that the dating culture is a good thing. Even on OnlyFans and talking to men, I feel like men also don't feel like the dating sites are a healthy way of dating.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting. And I feel like we need to have these conversations,
Yes.
especially I think as men and women, so that we understand what's happening and where we're coming from.
You know, what's interesting is I've been married 18 years. It's been awesome. So it was part of the reason why I like talking to people who are on these things because I have no clue. It's never going to be a thing for me, you know, but
Yeah,
I'm interested in the plight of different things. But I have a lot of single friends who use it. Guys, they all hate it. They all hate
everybody.
it. They
Yeah,
all hate it, which, but it's from what I can gather, it's a very addictive mechanism that has been created that keeps people on a crazy amount of choice train.
yes,
And that choice train is a slot machine that people pull
yes.
and never allows you to actually settle in with someone because you think, well, there's someone else maybe better
Yeah.
on it.
And another way of like dehumanizing people, right?
Right.
Because all of a sudden, I'm not Sarah with a story and a heart and a soul. I'm another picture to be
You
swiped.
are a swipe.
I'm a
And
swipe right or a swipe
right.
left. And
Yeah.
there's no real opportunity. I think most people get stuck in the merry-go-round of that because yeah, now all of a sudden you have FOMO, right? Well, what if I hop on and someone's even prettier or
Right.
they have a better job or but you'll never get off of it because then it's never ending.
That's
So
right.
for me, it was like 5 years of being on them and not one person that I've gone on a date with led to a relationship.
Mm.
That's not good. And anyone that knows me in real life knows that the only thing that I had wanted the last 5 years was to be remarried and to be a wife again.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of crazy to me too. Like, well, I'm on OnlyFans, but my heart is really of a wife. And that was on my vision board. That's all I ever talked about. I wanted a husband. I wanted to be a wife again. Um, so I think even for someone like me who was like very genuine in my heart to meet somebody and felt like I had a lot of love in my heart to give to somebody, um I just got caught up in
Yeah.
that horrible dating process myself. And then as a woman, with a man who was pursuing you, then you'd finally go on a date. Maybe things went well. Maybe you slept with him. Well, then I don't hear from him again and I get ghosted. So, this whole culture of just completely disrespecting people, not communicating, the ghosting, and even I do want to speak on the dick pic culture.
Oh
Because,
man, I've had discussions about this with people. It's
yes,
crazy. It's
a woman,
crazy.
as a woman, this culture for men to send you pictures of their penis is acceptable. Everybody knows about it. It's a funny thing, right? But there's nobody is treating those pictures like they're pornographic. Nobody's shaming men for their bodies sending these photos, and men certainly are not losing their jobs over it. But my body nude is a fireable offense, and I should be shamed and disgusted for my nudity. So, in a way where women are like, you're receiving these pictures unsolicited, and now all of a sudden, and in the 5 years I've been on dating sites, I've seen a lot of these dick pics,
I'm sure.
Um, Now on OnlyFans, I created a little report card, and men send me pictures and I rate them, and I earn $20 a report card for them. So yes, it's taking those um situations where I felt disempowered as a woman, and now all of a sudden I'm in control of it, and even financially um being able to put a price on it. So, in order, I know some people are, they're like, OnlyFans does not empower women. Well, to have that conversation, what we have to do is talk about the ways in our culture that women feel disempowered.
Mm.
Because if we don't have those conversations, then yeah, you're never going to understand why someone like me, all of a sudden, I do feel empowered because
Yeah.
I have say and I have control, and I, for once, have autonomy over my body and my sexual energy. And I'm even able to put a price tag on it. What?
Sarah, what is this obsession with guys sending pictures of their dick? I mean, is this like this whole leading with sexuality thing that they think that this is what women want?
No, I think this is my opinion. I think one of the things that we don't talk about is the body shaming that we put on men. We talk a lot about body shaming with women. And when my photos were used as revenge porn, I got a lot of body shaming comments.
Mm.
Even though I've lost a lot of weight and feel good about myself for the first time in my life, people still take an opportunity to jab somebody and make them feel like something's wrong with their body. It's my belief that this obsession with taking pictures of their penis has to do with deep insecurities
Mm.
that a man picks up along the way growing up about their bodies and what is deemed as masculine and sexy for a man.
Right.
And um it was interesting because a man, I do these ratings, and one of this man had said, please be kind, I'm doing my best. And it actually tugged at my heart because it made me realize that there's something there in the male culture and the way we program men growing up, that their status or their identity or being masculine is related to the size of their penis, and that could also come from the porn culture as well.
Right.
There's a lot of layers to it, but I think it's one of those things that men don't necessarily talk about.
It's weird though, because like if you're gonna lead with your penis, like why would you think psychologically that's the best way to lead with having a relationship with someone or that they will continue? It's a weird psychology.
It's a very weird psychology because as a woman, sex is so different for men and women.
Right.
And, even OnlyFans is sort of this, it's the Disney world of sex, right? Where I portray myself as this woman who's like constantly horny and always wanting sex. It's not like that for women. And sex for women is so much more emotional. Feeling safe with a man is very important to a woman. And I think that there is that disparity between what a man thinks about sex and what a woman thinks about sex, and they are two different things. Because for a woman, being on a dating site, I think you're looking for other characteristics like, the man's sense of humor.
Right.
And, for me, it's like, okay, are they a father? Are they involved in their children's lives? Um, Sex as a question would be way down the list. But like you said, men lead with that. And that's such a turnoff for women because what you're essentially saying is the reason why you're here and why you're talking to me is that you want to have a sexual experience with me. And that, I think, shuts a lot of women down from being on dating sites because, like I said, dating sites is an easy way for women to feel like a consumable. And that's not a good way to feel as a woman with a heart and a soul and intelligence, you know?
Yeah, just sounds like the wires are mixed up. But you also think too, it's like, how was someone introduced to sexual communication, and what one person wants and what another person wants is often zero talked about growing up. So then you have this culture of men, especially who just don't know, and they think, okay, well, my body must be my thing then. So I'm going to lead with that. And they don't understand what women actually want for that,
And
because who teaches them, you know?
nobody, and that's so interesting to me because being a mother on dating sites, I think a lot about my daughter and her growing up and oh my god, what's dating like going to be like for
Yeah.
her? And if I'm unable to navigate the dating scene as a 40-year-old, what chance does my daughter have? I feel very worried about this. We don't have conversations about consent. We don't make girls feel like they have the ultimate say and the power and the autonomy over their body. And that is not helping girls feel like they are empowered in that sense. And then even you take someone like me where, it's okay for men to lead with their bodies on dating sites. But if I do, and I show my body, and I try to take the sexual exploitation that is placed upon women at a very young age, and I use it for myself and empower myself in my own sexual exploitation, then all of a sudden I'm all these derogatory names that are only created for women.
Yeah.
So I think even that um, double standard affects the conversations. But the more I'm on OnlyFans, the more I really feel like if we don't start having conversations about sex, and I'm talking age appropriate
Of
conversation
course.
as children are growing up, we're setting them up for failure and dysfunction within themselves and within the opposite sex. Um, Even the topic of masturbation, and why
Mhm.
are we not talking about how that's a totally natural thing
Right.
to explore your body, and you get to do it in a safe and comfortable way, and know yourself before you ever have any interactions with another person, or even the OnlyFans platform, which is essentially a masturbation platform.
Yeah.
But again, masturbation is like the ultimate way of managing your sexual energy in a responsible way.
Yeah.
um where you have a lot of people out there being irresponsible with their sexual energy and essentially harming themselves and other people by not being responsible with it. And then we talk about the topic, the very triggering topic of abortions, right? But if you really are someone who is a proponent for pro life, then you need to be a proponent for sex education, and you need to
Right.
be a proponent for masturbation, and you should be doling out condoms at every bar, and you should be making birth control an over the counter product for girls to have access to. So I feel like you cannot have it both ways. You don't get to shame a woman in a very scary time after she's gotten pregnant in the parking lot at the abortion clinic.
Right.
that's not the time to meet a person. You meet them in an empowering way, and you show them ways to empower themselves, because being sexual is being human, and it really should be one of our most joyful and exciting parts of being in our human bodies, right? But because we have this culture that won't talk about it and shames people for their bodies and for being a sexual person, what we've done is created a culture of sexual dysfunction.
Lots of sexual dysfunction, and I've had several researchers, sex researchers, and sex itself, the act of intercourse is at an all-time low. Actually, most people are not having sex actually. So
I know
there's
there
a
are no fans.
right, there's a pent-up culture that is not actually having physical sex much, but they're on other platforms. They're trying to figure out their sexual energy.
Yes.
So it's an interesting time we're in, because there is a lot of sexual dysfunction, weird sexual energy, and people trying to figure out, how do I express this, all while being shamed for being wanting to be sexual at the
And
same
that's the
time.
problem, is the shame that we've told people something's wrong with you, something's
Yeah,
wrong with your body, you're wrong and disgusting for even wanting to have sex. Sex is very
of
pleasurable. And
course.
you know, and then you have all these other layers as far as people's traumas, and even sexual trauma, which I've had myself, being raped. And that creates a lot of layers to that as well. You have a whole hookup culture, and let's be real, that hookup sex is not um satisfying. You don't even know the person. You even know what their body or what turns them on. It's again, it's that consumable feeling of like,
Yeah,
what just happened? That didn't feel good. And then you're never gonna see that person again. That
yeah.
feels even worse. Where I feel like when this all happened, I sort of, because I've been on a spiritual path myself, I wrote this article about sacred sexuality. And I feel like that's such a powerful way of looking at our sexuality, that this is sacred. Our bodies are sacred and there's nothing wrong with them. But it is important to have discernment over those sexual encounters.
Most definitely. I think you came ready to talk today, you know. I think you've been ready to talk about this, Sarah. I mean,
Well, I'm very reflective.
yes, you are.
I'm thinking a lot about all this. And even when I am on OnlyFans, I really wish I had a PhD in psychology, because I feel like there's a whole study there. And when I think about the men who are on OnlyFans, there's something else that's happening in our culture, which is the demeaning of good and kind and respectful men to women. We create all of these, the stigma around men who treat women well. We say, nice guys finish last.
Right.
We call them simps.
Mm.
We talk to men and apply derogatory words to them, when there are good and kind and respectful men out there who want to treat women well.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
another problem.
That is another,
That's,
you know what, you're right. I mean, I was a product of that growing up. It was like, I've always been a really nice,
yeah, I can tell.
easygoing person. And, on people are conditioned, especially when they're young, to not like a person like me. And when they're young, it's like, oh, you're not dangerous or
Yeah,
exciting. And it's like, I remember my mom saying, you will become more valuable the older you get, because people want that. Women want that. They do.
yeah.
Like, especially as they get older, nobody wants a crazy, volatile, dangerous person. Nobody
unless
wants that.
unless you have your own traumas,
Yeah,
and you
right, right.
know
Then
what I
you
mean?
like move towards that weirdness. It's like crazy.
But that's not a healthy thing. It's
No.
like that trauma bonding is not
Right.
healthy. And there's something inside of you that needs to be healed. And I think that's another reason why I've been so hesitant to get into a relationship, because I've done a lot of healing work the last 5 years on myself. And I feel like I will only accept a man who's also done healing work and can provide me with a healing and healthy, loving relationship.
Yeah.
So on the OnlyFans platform, I'm friends with he's kind of a promoter. He has an OnlyFans page, but he actually told me, he said OnlyFans platform is actually a platform for mental health for men. And he said it's a platform where good men finish first.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he's also like super nice, good man, been
Yeah.
very supportive of me, helps me, I consult with him on some of my OnlyFans stuff. But it's interesting to hear it from a man's perspective as well.
Yeah.
And when I go on podcasts and when I speak about my experience being on OnlyFans, it has been very positive. And the
Yeah.
men that I uh, speak with and interact with are the kindest. They're so nice to me. They are so nice to me.
Yeah. Let me ask you this as we wrap up here is like, so if you were to get into a relationship in the future, a marriage, how would you treat continuing OnlyFans if that person was not a fan of that?
Yeah. You know what? I think um my future has a lot of question marks on it. One of the reasons that I have not gone into hardcore stuff, one, it doesn't really align with me. I just wanted to sell some nudes to make some money on the side here. This wasn't really like the way I
Yeah.
thought things were gonna go. But my hope is that I'm able to land in more of a advocacy role, write
Right.
a book, share my story. And I think that because I've had such difficulty finding a partner, being on the OnlyFans platform feels like it's gonna make it even more difficult. So at this point, I'm still getting my footing on what my future is gonna look like. And if the right person comes along, then I think one of two things is gonna happen. Either he's gonna want to make content with me and we're just gonna make content together, or he would say, hey, I don't feel comfortable with that. But considering it is my primary financial source right now, it's not something that I can just walk away from, unless and until I have some other opportunities
Sure.
uh, that present itself. So I don't know. We'll see. Everything's still pretty new. This has only been a couple months. I actually did run into that blogger on Saturday with my children.
Wow.
Yeah, at a birthday party right across the street.
Really? Talk
Yeah,
about weird.
it was crazy, but I stood up for myself right in front of my kids. I didn't make a scene, but I think that was important that my kids saw me be firm, stand up for myself. I did get us out of there pretty quick.
Yeah.
But I think it kind of goes back to this whole topic of humanizing people. It's easy to go off and write an article about someone when you don't know them and you don't know their story and their struggles. It's a lot harder to look someone in the eye and understand that they're human just like me. We're
Yep.
all just kind of trying our best to make our way through this crazy life. Um, and we all have different programs we're working through. We all have different traumas that need to be healed. But I think the greatest part of being human is empathy and being able to show kindness to one another as we try to navigate this crazy life we're on.
Most definitely. Sarah, this has been very enlightening, I have to tell you. And you were so eloquent in how you put things together. I really appreciate you just give me some time. Give me some of your time today.
Thank you. And I've been looking forward to our chat together. It was like booked a couple months ago. So
Yeah.
I think this worked out because there was a lot of time between then and now for things to happen and for me to reflect and to kind of get my thoughts together on how I want to move forward and
Yep.
share my story. So I appreciate you listening
Of
and
course.
um, having me on your platform. And I hope that we brought up a lot of really good topics for people to think about and maybe even some topics that people will feel brave to heal in their own lives as well.
Most definitely. And it takes a while to get on with me, but once you're on, it comes out real quick. So this will be out
Good.
within the next week, and we'll get it out there to a bunch of folks. And you're on the rise right now, as you were saying before we got on. I mean, a lot of things are happening for you. There's a lot more publicity, and you're telling your story. So this is just another entry into
Yeah, it
that
is. And
journey.
I'm honored that I get to be one of the voices in these really important conversations that are going to create a lot of healing for people. And I hope to inspire people and show them that you can come back from anything.
You can
You're
come
blessed,
back.
unstoppable.
This is great. You know what? We might have to have you come back down the line here. And as we'll see how this plays out over the next year, there could be even more stories to tell,
Oh, I'm
so
sure there will be. With me, there always is.
okay, Sarah. Okay. Thank you so much, Sarah. And if there's anything you want to plug, any website stuff, please do it now. And
Oh, thank you. Well, of course, all of my handles are love_Miss Sarah. So if you would like to, if you feel led in your heart to come and support me, my OnlyFans page is love_Miss Sarah underscore unlocked. And my Instagram page that just got the blue check mark is Sarah Juree. And you don't even have to support me on OnlyFans. I just appreciate every goodwill and comment that people take time out of their day to just send me some positive energy, because it shows me that even though my story is polarizing and not everybody is going to agree with me, there's a lot of people that do and that will. And so I don't have to go look for my fans. Somehow my fans find me.
wonderful. Sarah Juree, everyone. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.